Anyway, if you turn with me to Mark chapter 6 this morning, Mark chapter 6, we've been working through the Gospel of Mark the last month or two. And just like summer can be busy, just like our lives can be busy, Jesus and his disciples, they've been very busy as we've looked at the Gospel of Mark. People have been coming at Jesus with all these needs. They just keep coming, and Jesus and his disciples, they just keep helping them. Last time we were together in the Gospel of Mark, we were looking at a story where they went on a mission trip. If you remember that, a couple weeks ago. They'd been sent out by Jesus 2 by 2 to simply share the good news about Jesus in the surrounding villages. And if you remember, they had an incredible experience. I mean, they just had an incredible trip. If you remember, Jesus told them not to take any extra food, any extra money, any extra clothes. And apparently God had taken care of their needs. He had. God had even used them in incredible ways. Mark 6:13, towards the end of that story, you see they drove out many demons, anointed many sick people with oil, and they healed them. I mean, can you imagine going on a mission trip and casting out demons and healing the sick? Can you imagine what kind of stories they must have shared when they got back together, maybe around the campfire or wherever they met together? That would just be an incredible time. And do you think they would be excited after that kind of trip? Yeah. What wouldn't there be to be excited about? But at the same time, when you go on these types of trips, when you go on these really emotional, physically stressing trips, you can get worn out, can't you? I've experienced that a few times on vacation this summer. They would probably be beat, tired, spent, ready to take a break. They've been going and going and going. And remember, Jesus and his disciples all the way through the gospel so far have just been going. They haven't had a moment to rest. It's just ministry, ministry, ministry. And Jesus really sensed that. He had a plan for them in that. In fact, you can see it in our passage this morning. It begins with verse 30. It says the apostles gathered around Jesus and reported to him all they had done and taught, and what an exciting meeting that would have been. And then verse 31, then because so many people were coming and going that they didn't even have a chance to eat, he said to them, come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest. I mean, how exciting would that be? Just thinking about that. Jesus saying, hey, why don't you just come with me? Let's go find a quiet place and rest together. I mean, we need that kind of rest, don't we? After a long stretch of ministry and busyness, serving needs, spinning ourselves on others, we need breaks. Especially this kind of break, hanging out with Jesus, going to a quiet place with Jesus to get some rest. This is what rejuvenates us, to be able to jump back in and help people again. It's just the way things have to work. We have to take some breaks. And after a busy, chaotic time of life, maybe a busy week that you've had, I mean, how do you unwind? Do you have a process that you go through to unwind from a busy week? How do you get ready for that next push, that next week, that next busy time? Hopefully you think about having some time with Jesus, not just taking some me time, but also spending some time with Jesus. If you think about it, hopefully we look at it realistically and we see that even one full day of busyness is enough stress in our life, busyness in our life to need to go and spend some time with Jesus and get rejuvenated spiritually, at least weekly. So how do you get when you don't get that charging time? How do you start responding to life when you are just spent? If you're like me, you start getting grumpy. Anyone else get grumpy? I might be the only one here. I get grumpy. Oh, Marv, grumpy. I get more easily frustrated. I can't think clearly as well. If you're like me, the thing that you should be doing, you end up not doing. Well, I need to be doing this over here, but why don't I clean the closet first? Does that happen to you? You just kind of get distracted. It's just not easy to stay on task. And that's really something that we need to do, just continue to be able to take some breaks and get rejuvenated. But it's interesting, this is not what this story is about. I don't know if you know this story well, but Jesus has plans for a break, but they don't actually get to take the break. He wants to go to a quiet place, but they don't get there. The plan's changed. Now, how about you? If you were, really kind of preparing your mind, Jesus has just said, hey, let's go have a quiet place. Go to a quiet place. Let's get rejuvenated. And you're going, yes, I need that. And you're finally there, and you're starting to relax. You're starting to enjoy yourself, get rejuvenated. And Jesus comes over to you, and he says, I have something to ask you to do. Would you be willing to feed, I don't know, how about 5,000 people at a picnic? Would that just, yeah, let's do that. No, it wouldn't be that way, would it? If you were in their shoes, how would you be feeling? I need a break. Jesus, you just admitted yourself, we need a break. Follow the story along here, verse 32. So they went away by themselves in a boat to a solitary place. But many who saw them leaving recognized them and ran on foot from all the towns and got there ahead of them. Try to put yourselves in the disciples' shoes here. Oh, come on, right? You've got to be kidding. I've just invested a week, maybe longer, in needy people. I've helped out people. I've completely given myself away. I've been doing what you've asked me to do, Jesus. And now I'm spent. I need a break. I deserve a break, Jesus. Could you please just send these people away? Please. Please. Can you just let someone else help them for once? Why do we have to do it all? Now, don't lie to me here. Let's just have an honest moment on a Sunday morning. You ever been there before? Spent, worn out, tired. You might not have said those words to Jesus, but maybe you would have liked to. We've all been there before. Worn out. I just need some me time, just need a break. And thankfully, Jesus comes back and he says, you know what, you're right. You've done enough. I'll get rid of these people. I'll tell them to come back another time. It'll be okay. That's what Jesus says, right? Verse 34, when Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them. It's that compassion word. Because they were like sheep without a shepherd. So he began teaching them many things. He began meeting their needs. Great. Bleeding heart Jesus, always caring about others, always wanting to help. It's ridiculous, isn't it? Can't we take a break? I'm a disciple of Jesus. I've given up everything to follow him. I just went on a mission trip for him, for heaven's sake, right? And who are these people? They can't possibly be as important to Jesus as I am. I'm doing all this stuff for him. When do I get to be the needy one? You ever asked that question? I deserve more attention from Jesus than these people. I'm tired of giving. I want to do some getting. This is ridiculous. I want my way for a change. Can I get my way sometime? And right now I want some rest. I'm tired. Spent. Now, I'm not saying the disciples actually said this. This is actually, I'm sure they were bigger than this. This is actually more probably of what I would have said if I was in their situation. Not any of you guys. Right? So how do you handle these interruptions in life? Those times in life when you are sure Jesus has something in mind, and it certainly wasn't this. You ever had one of those moments? In fact, I'm pretty sure that if I was in this situation, that I would just plop right down and maybe even throw a fit until it was all over. Is that too real? And much to the chagrin of myself and apparently the disciples as well, it doesn't get over quickly, actually. In the story, verse 35, by this time it was late in the day. He's been going all day. So his disciples came to him. This is a remote place, they said. And it was a remote place. They were headed to a solitary place, right? This is a remote place. And it's already very late, Jesus. Send the people away so they can go to the surrounding countryside and villages and buy themselves something to eat. I mean, this isn't an unreasonable request, is it? It's not. It's even in the best interest of these people, before it gets any later, to go find some food. They don't have enough food for them. They've got to go find something, and if they wait too long, they'll miss out. Come on, Jesus. I mean, yes, these people are needy, and they should be able to find, but they should be able to find their own solutions to their own problems, shouldn't they? I mean, don't they participate in this? I mean, Jesus, you don't want to help them out so much that it actually might cause them to be dependent upon you, right? Always coming to you and they have a problem. You don't want that, Jesus. Well, maybe I kind of painted myself into a corner on that one. Needless to say, Jesus doesn't like their recommendation. Verse 37. But he answered, you give them something to eat. Isn't that nice? You give them something to eat. I mean, can you hear the conversation? Hold it now. Jesus, there's 5,000 people. And it's not just 5,000 people. There's 5,000 men. So if you counted all the men or the women and children, you're at least 10,000. Jesus, we're in the middle of nowhere. We've just returned from a trip where we had no money, no food, no extras of anything. Remember, Jesus? What you're asking us to do, it's impossible. It's impossible. And it wasn't possible, wasn't it? 10,000 people? Think about this. Do you think Jesus knew that what he was asking was impossible? I'm pretty sure he did know. In fact, I'm 99.9% sure that he knew it was impossible. And he didn't say, hey, let us go and give them something to eat. He said, you go help them. You go give them something to eat. I mean, if he knew something was impossible and he was asking for it, why would he do it? I mean, what is he after? What is his point that he's trying to make? I don't answer that yet. We're not quite done with the story. Into verse 37, they said to him, that would take more than a half a year's wages, Jesus. Are we to go and spend that much on bread and give it to them to eat? You know, it's pretty refreshing here, actually, because finally they are saying what they are thinking out loud. They are openly challenging Jesus' command. A little bit of sarcasm. I mean, and do you blame them? Are you serious, Jesus? Do you really want us to do this? So here are the disciples. They're in a situation where, to be honest with you, they don't even have to pray to find out what God's will is for their life, do they? Jesus has very clearly told them that he wants them to help. They don't have to pray. They don't have to check into anything. Here's Jesus telling them they've been called to help these people. They're already tired. They're already emotionally spent. And now they're feeling what? Completely overwhelmed. There's no way we're going to do this. Completely inadequate. How are you asking us to do this? This doesn't even make sense, Jesus. I mean, have you ever been there? Have you ever been in a situation where you feel like you've been called to help somebody, but their needs are so beyond what your ability is to help them? You ever been there? How do you respond? You know, I really should be helping that person over there, but I don't even know how to help them. Do you act like you don't see them? Do you walk the other direction? You know, I was working through this passage, and as I left the church that day, I pull out, and there's a car broken down right there. And I couldn't help but say, well, somebody's got to help them. And you know how much I know about cars? Nothing. So I'm sitting there in the car thinking, well, I can't not help them because I'm just reading about this in this passage. So I'm sitting there, and I sat there long enough, apparently, because someone stopped and helped them. So that's probably not the best example. I'm not sure why I shared that story. I mean, what do you do when, do you allow your limitations to keep you from actually helping people, responding to the need? Let me ask you an important question. Can God still use you when you are not adequate for the task? Can God still use you? Let's keep going. Verse 38. How many loaves do you have? Jesus asked. Go and see. What is Jesus saying there? Don't tell me you don't have enough. You haven't even checked it out yet. At least start trying to respond to what I told you to do. Humor me a little. Go find out what you've got. Go check your resources. It's almost like Jesus wants them to get to the end of the rope, to have them look squarely into their own inadequacy. He's asked them to do something impossible, and now he wants to make sure that they realize that they just can't do it. The proof's there. They've checked it out. It's not going to happen. They're inadequate. So why does Jesus do this to them? Any ideas? Now, it would have taken some time to do this survey. I don't think we talk about this much in the story. 10,000 people. They got to check with 10,000 people to see what resources they have available. That would take some time, wouldn't it? They'd had to be going to all these groups of people saying, hey, do you have any resources? Do you have any food that we could use? Do you have any food that you could use, that we could use? Do you have any food? That would have taken some time, wouldn't it? And again, don't miss out on this detail. The news wasn't good. Over and over and over and over again. Read the end of verse 38. When they found out, they said 5 loaves and 2 fish. There's 10,000 people there. 5 loaves and 2 fish? Are you kidding me? That's almost as big a miracle as the miracle that's going to happen, right? How could there only be 5 loaves and 2 fish with 10,000 people there? So how many times did they get rejected? Think about that. Do you have anything that you could give us? No. Anything that you could give us? No. No, no, no. Just the rejection itself would have probably brought them to tears. 5 loaves and 2 fish. How do you imagine the disciples reported this to Jesus? Was it, you know what, Jesus? I'm excited to tell you, 5 loaves and 2 fish. We've got plenty. It's going to be great. You think that's how they reported it? Pretty sure it was an Eeyore moment. 5 loaves and 2 fish. It's horrible. It's terrible out there. It's not going to happen. What are we even doing this for? And how do you think Jesus responded? Do you think they responded as they expected him to, or something different? Maybe he responded, wow, I guess you were right. Who would have thunk it? We should have sent them away to find their own food. 5 loaves and 2 fish, that's not much. Is that how he responded? No. 5 loaves and 2 fish, huh? Well, this is your lucky day, because that's exactly what we need. Isn't that amazing? And why was it exactly what they needed? Because this wasn't about you. This is not about your resources. It's not about your adequacies. This is about me. This is about me. I just sent you on a trip telling you to take nothing extra, no food, no money, no clothes, and did I take care of you? Did it work out? Yeah, it did. So when are you going to learn to depend upon me instead of you? When is this going to happen? Actually, Jesus didn't say any of that. I just made it up. He actually assumed that was enough. There's no comment. He just moves right into the process. Just think about this. Verse 39, it says, then Jesus directed them to have all the people sit down in groups on the green grass. So they sat down in groups of hundreds and 50s. He's moving forward with this. After they told him 5 loaves and 2 fish, you can just imagine the disciples going, are you kidding me? Did he hear us say 5 loaves and 2 fish? We did not say 5,000 loaves and 2,000 fish. Jesus, did you hear us? What are you doing? You're going to make a fool out of us. And then Jesus says something pretty significant. Or he does it actually in verse 41. Taking the 5 loaves and 2 fish and looking up to heaven. Why do you think he looked up to heaven? He gave thanks. Thanks for what? 5 loaves and 2 fish? Are you kidding me? He's giving thanks for that? And then he broke the loaves. Do you see what Jesus is doing here? Doesn't matter if you have enough. We need to take what we have. Well, as little as that is, it doesn't really matter. Even if it's just 5 loaves and 2 fish, take all that we have and what? Give thanks to God for it. Give thanks to God for our little. Give thanks to God for it. And then live in faith. Take all that we have, as little as that might be, and give it to God to use and allow him to deal with the results. I mean, can we trust him with that? That is so counter our culture. I mean, we want more, we want more, we want more, we want more. I don't have much, Jesus, but I am so thankful for it. That is so counter to our culture. End of verse 41. Then he gave the loaves to his disciples to distribute to the people. The disciples were still involved here. He also divided the fish among them all. They all ate. They were satisfied. The disciples picked up 12 basketfuls of broken pieces of bread and fish. The number of the men who had eaten was 5,000. So who fed the 5,000? Well, ultimately, the disciples did, just like Jesus asked them to. How did they do it? By giving all that they had and allowing Jesus to do his thing. Did Jesus come through? Did they all get enough? Yeah. They all ate and were satisfied. In fact, there was 12 baskets left over. I mean, this is always so funny to me. Why would they take leftovers? I mean, they have God. They have Jesus with them. They could ask for more food anytime they want. He just produced all this. Why the leftovers? Well, the leftovers was the reminders, wasn't it? The reminders that 5 loaves is more than enough for God to use. More than enough. That whatever you've got is more than enough for God to work through. I mean, imagine that thought. I mean, do you believe this? Whatever you've got going on in your life, it's more than enough for God to use. Now, we have all sorts of excuses, don't we? All sorts of reasons to not get involved. I mean, I don't know anything about cars. I mean, there's all sorts of reasons why we shouldn't get involved. But it's more than enough. It's more than enough with God. I mean, how do you think the disciples felt after the feeding of the 5,000? You ever thought about that? Do you think they were still worn out? Do you think they were still tired, emotionally spent? How many basketfuls were left over? 12. How many disciples were there? 12. I mean, just imagine being one of those disciples. As you were handing out that food, and it was stretching. I mean, you're handing out food. You didn't think it was going to work. You thought this was the craziest idea ever, and it's working. A miracle. Would that have been exciting? Woo! This is awesome. I mean, the disciples, they were called to serve. Jesus used them. He allowed them to participate, which is awesome. That's the way our God works. And he allowed them to be involved in a miracle. He took the little that they had and he multiplied it somehow, and he made it useful. I mean, do you think the disciples got anything out of that moment? Overflowing joy? This is so cool. A sense of the power of God. Significance because you're able to be used by God and help people out. It's the overflowing abundant life that Jesus keeps talking about, isn't it? I don't care how tired I am. I'm signing up for that. Anyone with me? How cool would it be? I mean, what is the point of this story? What is Jesus asking us to do? What do you have? What do you have that you need to share? That he's calling you to share? Who is it that he's asking you to minister to? Do you feel adequate? In all honesty, I hope you don't. It's a hard thing to say. I hope you feel completely inadequate. Now, don't get me wrong here. I'm not hoping for some type of self-pity party and to have you focus all of your attention on all the deficits and problems that you have. We should never let our limitations define us. But at the same time, I hope that we get to the end of our rope, just like Jesus was trying to do with his disciples. Why? So that they would trust in him and not themselves. So that they might have the courage to see others as Jesus did. I mean, when you feel inadequate to help someone, you just are afraid. It's just an awkward moment when you see someone in need. You're just not sure what to do. But when you know that no matter what you do, that God's going to help you do it, you can have a confidence, a courage, a compassion, a love for people that you've never had before. You don't have to look the other way. You don't have to walk by. You can actually reach out to that person and love them. You don't have to be rich in resources to be able to be used by God. I mean, is there anything that God can't do? You know, I think real humility is a healthy thing, admitting that we are deeply inadequate. But our focus can't be on the inadequacies. Our focus has to be on him, what he can do, what he brings to the table. What has God given you? He created you. He gave you abilities that you have. In fact, to not acknowledge what God has given you, it's highly offensive to God. It has to be. What are you saying about who's in you when you say, well, I'm no good for nothing? God can't use me. So go ahead, make your list of deficits, your problems, whatever you've got going against you. I mean, those were 5,000 real people standing in front of them. It was a difficult situation. But be real about what you have as well. The gifts, the talents, the abilities, the resources that you have. You have God in your corner. Give what you do have to God. Give it to him. Be thankful for what you do have, whatever that is. And then begin a life of trust. Allow him to multiply it. So this morning, is there an area in your life right now where you are just avoiding getting involved because you feel inadequate? You don't feel like there's anything that you can do for that person, that situation. Would you promise God this morning a different response? Choosing to live in faith, choosing to trust and obey. Maybe you feel overwhelmed. Maybe you feel spent. Maybe you're seeking some rest. Would you trust him with your life? I mean, I can't promise you peace and quiet, but I can tell you that he's really good at joy and meaning in life. Maybe your walk with Jesus is all about you performing for him, you trying to be adequate for him, when you really just need to admit your deficits, your problems, and trust in him. I don't know where you are in this story, this passage this morning, but he's got a lot to say to us, doesn't he? It's an interesting passage. As we prepare for communion this morning, as we're passing out these elements, I want you to take some time to remember what God has done for you and to remember what these elements mean. I mean, they're very similar to the reminders that we see in the leftovers in the story. The bread is his body broken for you. The juice is his blood spilled for you. You were not adequate to take care of your sin problem. You were not adequate to take care of the problems that you have. Jesus is adequate. He's the one that provides forgiveness and hope. But it doesn't end there, does it? It's not just about remembering what he's done for us. He wants to help you with your life right now, in this life. He wants to work through you. Would you take some time just thanking Jesus for all the things that he's put in your life, that he's created you with? Telling Jesus that you trust him as he calls you to help others. Would you be willing to give him permission to use you and whatever you've got, as little as that might be, to help others? Would you just spend some time talking to Jesus about this? As the ushers come this morning, would you feel free to receive the elements at the altar if you'd like, or we'll be passing it down the rows. Let's just pray. Lord God, we are so thankful that you are a God of infinite resources. But that you don't choose to do everything on your own. You choose to work through us for some reason. You want us to participate. You want us to trust and obey. Lord God, would you just, as we spend some time in your presence this morning, would you just remind us of all the great things you've done for us? Would you help us to be thankful? Help us to trust in you. Lord God, as we pass out these elements, would your presence just be in this place? Would you just meet with us? We need your touch this morning. We need your encouragement. We need your love this morning. Amen. In 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verses 23 to 26, the Lord Jesus, on the night he was betrayed, he took bread, and when he had given thanks, he broke it. And he said, "This is my body, which is for you. Do this in remembrance of me." Eat and be thankful. And in the same way, after supper, he took the cup, saying, "This cup is the new covenant in my blood. Do this whenever you drink it in remembrance of me. For whenever you eat this bread and drink this cup, you proclaim the Lord's death until he comes." Drink and be thankful. Let's pray. Lord God, we have gathered in this place to praise you, to lift you on high, to worship you. We've taken a moment from our busy schedules to remember all that you've done for us and be thankful. Lord God, as we leave this place, would you help us to continue to be thankful people? Continue to remember all that you do for us. Continue to trust in you. Help us to be your hands and feet. Help us to be confident and courageous in your strength with your help. Help us to be all that you've called us to be. In Jesus' wonderful name, amen. Have a great week. You are sent.